like the description that Hawk always tells Poppy is like, she's so unexpected. And I just think it's so weird. He says it like over and over and over again. And I'm like, give a girl a different compliment, okay? She doesn't want to be unexpected all the time, okay? Hey friends, it is March. I can't even believe it. But you know what that means? It means it's time for another monthly reading wrap up. So I have my stack of books over here, as well as some that I don't have with me because I listened to them, and we can just go through and talk about what I read in February and what I think would be worth your time, just depending on the genre that you like. So kick back and relax and let's get into it. Okay. So first, you guys have already literally seen the video on it. You know that I loved it. I mean, I dressed up as freaking Sailor Moon. So obviously we cannot not talk about this book, Daughter of the Moon Goddess. If you haven't seen that review, I will link it up top. But if you didn't watch that, this is the story of the Chinese mythology of the moon goddess Chang'e. But in this story, she has a daughter who it focuses on, who is trying to find her way in the world. It is definitely fictional, fantasy. There is a lot of world building in this. If you love a lot of description and just like lush, beautiful world building, and you like a lot of that detail, I think you'll really like this book. It's also, I mean, as much as it's a story about Xingyin finding herself and growing from this meek and mild and sheltered girl essentially into this strong badass woman, it is also kind of a love story. So I would say the last half of the book is a lot of romance. So if you're not really into the romance thing, you might want to skip this, but it has it all. It has fights, it has dragons, it has magic, it has a moon goddess, it has celestial beings, it has mythology. So if you like that stuff, you will definitely love this book. And also, Su Lin is just a great writer. She's releasing the second book in this duology, I think later this year. So thank you, Su Lin. I can't wait to read that because I have so many questions. If you have read this book and you want to talk spoilers, because you might have the same questions that I do, check out my review, go to the end, and we talk a lot about like a lot of things that happen in this book, and like I have a lot of thoughts. So definitely pick it up. Plus, look at this cover. It's just beautiful. So yeah, coming of age, if you love that, you'll love this. You want a strong female lead, or you want to watch that character development into a strong female lead, recommend this book, y'all. Pick it up. On the flip side of that, I reread this, and if you guys have been with me for a long time, you know that I love the Dragon Riders of Pern. I am an Anne McCaffrey fan who actually got me into like sci-fi fantasy, and Dragonflight is definitely sci-fi fantasy. There's dragons in here. It's a whole other world with a lot of different animals and creatures in there. But it has been a very long time since I have read this series. And I mean, it's comforting. Also, this book is so old, it has that smell of like old book that you just don't get in these like newer books. And so it's like just comforting. But as I was reading it, it kind of lost some of its luster. I think I reread it as a grown woman, and there's some stuff in here that's questionable. Maybe it's a sign of the times, of when it was written. Just between like Lessa and Flar and their relationship. But you know what? I'm about to talk about another book that also has a flawed relationship in it. So like in the way that they handle like the narrative. So maybe it's not a sign of its time. And it's just like Flar's always shaking Lessa, whether he's mad at her, whether he's happy with her, whether he's afraid for her, and he's like slapping her. Like there's a lot in this book where I'm like, I don't know if that's, I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know. Rereading it was kind of bittersweet. I don't know how to feel about it. I'm still processing my feelings. Let me know if you have read Dragonflight. If you haven't read it and you're really not into old kind of sci-fi stuff, I don't think you'll like this. Yeah. If you have read it, let me know your thoughts if you've reread it recently. Because Flar's kind of a dick. And we're gonna be honest about it. He's kind of just a dick, and I don't know why Lessa stays with him. In that same vein, I read this chonker, right? From Blood and Ash by Jennifer Armentrout. I know a lot of people, I think, reference her as Jayla. First of all, this book, the font seems excessively large. I don't know if that's just me, but the font seems excessively large, and the pages are like real thick. So I don't think it needed to be 615 pages, but it is. From Blood and Ash is basically, and this is like voted a Goodreads Choice Award for like a best romance. I have questions about that, but it is a romance novel, essentially. It gives me Serpent and Dove vibes in the sense that it's like a fantasy epic, but like with a focus on the romance. So this would be more romance than it is fantasy, epic adventure. But it's about what is her name? Look, I just read this and I'm like, what is her name? It's about Poppy, and she is the maiden, right? Which means she is going to become ascended. So essentially I think the second and third sons get ascended, if I'm correct. I'll correct myself if it's not the second and third. But essentially, they ascend, and then they start this whole like new life. But no one really knows what ascending means, right? So the ascended are kind of like an elite group, right? Because they have these like powers, and they're chosen to be ascended. So she is the maiden, which means she's like extra special, right? So Poppy is this extra special person, and she is not allowed to do anything because she's the maiden. And when you think of a maiden, you think of someone who is true and pure and, you know, really has all these virtues. And that's what Poppy is supposed to be. So they keep her hidden inside. And it's really about her learning how to stand up for herself because she goes through some really horrible things. And then she has a guard who is named Hawk. And then it's kind of about just like their relationship and what happens there. But to be honest, I don't really like Hawk. I really don't like him. I really didn't like their relationship. I think it was fine midway, and then from like the middle to the end, I really just hated Hawk. So for me, this book is like, I'll give it a 3. I really didn't like it. I was like, I just don't like the relationship aspect of it. I just don't think it's a healthy relationship. Also, it's like super long. It doesn't need to be that long. Do I prefer it to Serpent and Dove? Yeah, I would say maybe. There's a lot of sex scenes in this, so if you're really into something a little spicy, you wanna get into a little sensual magic, you've got a lot of sexy stuff happening in this book. So pick it up. Also, there's just a lot of like, he describes like the description that Hawk always tells Poppy is like, she's so unexpected. And I just think it's so weird. He says it like over and over and over again. And I'm like, give a girl a different compliment. Okay. She doesn't want to be unexpected all the time. Okay. Okay. And then the last 2 that I read, because we did do 5 this month, I listened to Apples Never Fall by Liane Moriarty. And it is considered a mystery thriller. And I was on Goodreads and I was like looking at all the reviews, and it's got a lot of mixed reviews. And I can understand why, but I absolutely love this book. It's long, and I think that's probably part of it. I think the last 2 chapters of that book were unnecessary, but she included them anyway. And I would say it's less mystery thriller as much as it's like family dynamics and how like a dysfunctional family works through their bullshit because like their mother is missing, right? So the whole premise is that Joy, their mom, is missing. And so the family, it's like the Delaney's, there's 4 kids, and it really revolves around tennis. Their family owned a tennis facility, and they were really into tennis. They're a sports family, and kind of how sports can be really intense and can kind of tear families apart when you're like expect so much from your children, but then also when their mom and dad coach other children, like the family dynamics there when you're not as good as other children, or your family is spending a lot of time with other people, like working through some of that, and then just like childhood things that you would see, right? It's like just like when you're in a family that large, it's like not getting enough attention, or feeling like you were never good enough, or being the old. I mean, if you've seen Encanto, you know how Luisa felt, right? She was like the oldest, right, and taking the brunt of everything, and that's how, you know, in this family, that's how Logan kind of feels, and all of that stuff. So I would say it's really about family dynamics and working through it more than it is figuring out what happened to Joy. With that being said, you also kind of dive into like, well, they're like, well, maybe what if the father did it? What if their dad did it? Like, who's going to take his side and who's not going to take his side? And what do you do if your father did murder your mom? Like, how do you work through those feelings? Because he's still your dad, but if you murdered your mom, like, so it's like really interesting, and I really loved it. I thought it was such a good dive into the psyche of like a dysfunctional family, or just like a family in general. And what I loved was I listened to it, and the author was not the author, but the author, because she wrote it, right? The narrator was so great. It's hysterical. It's set in Australia, and like just the way that the author wrote the book is so funny. There are some really good quips in there that I think are like just hysterical. And so I really think you should pick it up. And I would listen to it because I think it helps you get over the fact that it is like this really long book, because it's an 18-hour audiobook. But I was laughing so hard through most of it that I really didn't care what happened to Joy. I'm like, whatever, Joy. I'm just too busy like trying to figure out your family dynamics because it's wild. So I would definitely give that book a chance and definitely listen to it. Okay? Because it's so funny. Okay, and then last but definitely not least is The House in the Cerulean Sea. And I don't have my physical copy with me because I left it at book club last night. Shout out to my book club friends. I drank too much wine, I'm going to be honest, and I definitely left my book there. Totally forgot it amidst the cupcakes and the wine. I don't have it. But that book is so cute. If you guys have not read it, it reminds me of Lemony Snicket and a series of unfortunate events, just the way that it's written, and the way that it like portrays different things. It's like satirical in like just really hyperbolic in the way that it describes society. It really takes this really these deep themes and thoughts, like just like prejudice and treating others differently because they're different, and like the foster care system and how people, you know, how we treat kids who are in group homes, and it really takes those really heavy themes and is able to distill them down for a younger audience. So I would say with this book, it truly is a young adult book, right? Versus like this from Blood and Ash, 100% more mature for sure. New adult. Daughter of the Moon Goddess is going to be squarely, young adult, but can skew older. And then obviously this, I would say, is young adult as well. The Cerulean Sea, the House of the Cerulean Sea, is definitely, I would say, intended for like young adults, maybe like middle school, early high school. I think anyone can enjoy it, but the way that it's written and it handles those themes, I think would be really great for a younger audience as well as an older audience. But back to how it's written, it's like we're in the department, like the department of in charge of like magical youth, and they have the way that they're like they talk about the structure is like they're the caseworkers, and then they have like extremely upper management, and that's what they're called. And just like they have like 15-minute lunch breaks, and it's like ridiculous. Everything is so blown out and hyperbolic that it's funny. But it is about Linus, who is a caseworker. He's by the books. He does everything by the rules and regulations, like literally to the T, where it's just comical. He follows everything to the letter, down to how he dresses, how he gets places, and honestly, he loves his job and he's really objective and he does his job well, but there's no like emotion or attachment in it. And so he gets sent on this like classified 4 level to go check out this orphanage by the Cerulean Sea. And so there he meets Arthur Parnassus and this his group home where he has all of these kids. I think he has so I think there's 6 of them that he takes care of, and they're considered like highly unusual kids, like more so than the other magical youth that he has gone and he has looked at. And what he does is he goes into these like orphanages and makes sure that the kids are being treated well, that there's nothing untoward going on, and then makes recommendations to either keep the orphanage open or close it down. And so it's really about him learning how to live life to the fullest and not just like we don't just have to go to work and then go home and then eat and pay taxes and die. Like there's so much more out there for you, and it's about his like character arc as he really learns that just because you're different doesn't make you scary or bad, and that you can love something or someone or people, and you can have friendships, and you don't have to just do what society tells you to do, and that life can be full of color. Because if you read it in the very beginning, it just seems like everything is so dreary and gray and black and white, and then he goes to this house by the Cerulean Sea and everything is just vibrant and full of color and life, and then it just kind of juxtaposes that between like the life that he was leading, and you can kind of see that transition kind of happen for him as he's like going through this like journey kind of for himself, but then also trying to help shape and change the mind of a lot of other people who are scared of these children who are magical, even in their only children. I highly recommend that book. It was so cute, you guys. If you want something that is just a good light read that will make you feel good, I recommend that. That would be a good one to read with if you have kids that are really into reading, like, I don't know, 10, 11, 12. Like, I think that's a good book to read with them because I think you'll enjoy them. I have a friend in our book group and she doesn't usually read fantasy fiction, and this obviously is, and this is like her first book, and because that's not her genre, and she loved it. And so I think like that's such a good book to start out on if you're new to that genre as well. So those are my recommendations. If I had to choose and rank this month, I would definitely do I think I would do House by the Cerulean Sea, and then I would do Daughter of the Moon Goddess, and then I would do Apples Never Fall, and then I would probably do From Blood and Ash and Dragonflight. I'm so sorry. I just, for whatever reason, and you know what? Maybe not. I might do this first because From Blood and Ash, I just don't know. I can't get behind it. I don't get the hype, y'all. Tell me what you think, because I don't get the hype. So I think that will be it, y'all. I'll hit you up again later this month with more book reviews. If there's ones that you want to see particularly from this month, more in depth, let me know and I can definitely oblige you. But yeah, until next time, I will see you later. Bye.